That's not gonna be known by. That's not gonna be six months. Largely. No, that's right. You're right.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to put this to order, even though there's a few people that are not here yet. We do have a quorum. I thank you for attending our regularly monthly meeting of the Board of Directors, obviously scheduled here for 8 o'clock. And again, welcome. Thank you for being here. You're very important to the community. With that, I will move on to the Audit Finance Committee. And that be me as well. I'll be sick of me by the end of this. We can go fast. So we met on the November financial statements. And you have been provided the meetings. The main thing was the 2026 recast budget, which we'll go over today. Yeah. Okay. So we basically asked a lot of questions, and we, I would say, forwarded it to the board for their approval. And we talked about the FSA, HSA, the health plans, the things that just have to be done every year that Jim and Trish and Deanne have explained to us. We did move into an executive session. There was nothing that was passed during that executive session, and the minutes do give you more details than what I just identified. Okay.
Yeah, like, do you have a governance meeting?
No, there is no governance meeting. And we are going to have to go through the review the financials. And at that point, before we go on to Jim, we're going to bring the resolutions up because a couple of people have to leave right on time. So if you'll go in, is there questions on the minutes? Because we'll approve those after the review of the financials.
Yeah, there was just one change on the executive session. I suppose if anybody should be on the details, should be me. The executive session for a personnel matter is not a proper executive session. So the motion that I made was to go into executive session to discuss the possible appointment, termination, or individual. Yeah, so to make sure that
we'll take that as an adjustment.
Language.
Any other questions? If none, we'll turn it over to Deanne about the financials for November.
November financials, there's nothing remarkable. The fund balance is $997,000. Of that, 615 is cash. We have 276 in a money market with NBT. Some of that cash, there's other money in the money market with Arrow Bank. Our accounts receivable is 80,000. Most of that is from the county and is on track. The accounts payable is 36,000. It's still that hanging payable for being landscape. And that should be settled shortly. That's for the Tech Meadows.
I want to clarify that we have the responsibility for the city of doing the planning for Tech Meadows and to market that property. So we engaged in a first in a decade extensive review of the options. And some of that money was ARPA money, and some of that money was out of the EDC fund. But the reason this receivable is staying here is because the report has not been finalized, and I won't finish paying them until they finalize the report. But I'm certain it's going to happen before Christmas. So we will enter the new year with that study, which we will review with the new incoming administration of the city once we've had a chance to process it.
Income, well, it's the same short. We came in below budgeted, and we kept the expenses low enough. At 688,000. So, yeah. Any questions on financials? Should I go into the recap?
Yeah.
Okay. So in your folder, there's like a large sheet.
The reason for we had this event budget for the in September. That's before many things get finalized. It was before the county had finalized their allocations, before we had city, and before we knew even things like our healthcare expenditures for the coming year. So all you can do is make your best estimate at the time, and then we always have to go through a process of truing it up at the end of the year. So there's nothing unusual about this. There are some new things though, and we should highlight them as we go through.
So yeah, like Jim said, we do this every year in December, and things change up until the minute, let's be honest. So you have, the black is the recast, so that's the new budget that if you approve, will be operating under. The blue is what was approved in September, and the red is the variance. So for, the income variance on the contracts, there's no variance. Everything is as we had expected back in September. For events, we saw exactly how we performed for the luncheon, so we added 4,800. That's going to be ticket sales is the 4,800, and then the rest is going to be sponsorships, which we think we have some people that we could hit up for sponsorships.
Well, we've actually already engaged with several potential sponsors.
The grants, so that moved a lot in the end of the year. We've been making this effort to expand our base of income, and so we have now 3 grants. One is a sort of a partnership with the LBC, and that's 15,000, and then we have one that just got finalized the day before we made this recast budget. That's a collaboration between the Rockefeller Family Foundation and the Adirondack Community Foundation and ourselves to work on a childcare initiative. And so that's worth 15,000. And then the other grant is 20,000. That's the connectivity grant, the Connect All grant that we talked about earlier.
So again, I want to clarify here. We don't seek any grant that we're not already doing work in that space. The child care initiative is actually part of a larger initiative called Thriving Communities in the North. And these are things that we are typically engaged in with other organizations in the park, things like housing, broadband. This year, there's a particular focus on childcare, but this is part of our outreach to the outer county. And some of this benefit could potentially accrue past Warren County lines, but we focus on how do we do it from our presence up towards the park. So the interesting thing about this is that the foundation that's funding this grant, which provided the money directly to the Adirondack Community Fund or Community Foundation, put as a requirement that the EDC be involved in engaging the business community and engaging other economic development organizations. We didn't actually seek this. They put that as a requirement in the grant, and then we were drawn into it. And that's as a result, I think, of some of our successful work in some of the outer county communities. I think that's a really good sign. And of course, we then had to sit down with the Adirondack Foundation to say, well, okay, what would you like us to do? There's going to be a consultant that is key to how to deploy and develop a potentially more viable model for childcare in the North. They're going to sit here. They're going to be paid for by the Adirondack Foundation. We'll essentially just provide a place for them, and then they'll integrate with us as we continue to do outreach in communities like North Creek, like we're already doing. In fact, North Creek will probably be one of the points of emphasis in this entire grant. We're out in North Creek because of our work with the sewer and the larger business expansion. Typically, I'm there for some meeting every single week. And so this essentially allows us to just couple this into the work that we're already doing. And had they come to us and said, we just want you to go lead a child care initiative that doesn't have anything to do with what you're doing, I don't know that we would have said yes. I don't think there's very much risk in this. The $15,000 is a very modest amount of money for us simply to make sure that we can house the employee and any of our expenses associated with adding this to the agendas of the things we're doing in communities we're already doing. On the connectivity grant, that has still not been finalized. The way the state works is exceedingly slow. So we've done all the process to not only apply for the grant, but be notified that we've been selected for the next phase, but they have to go through a public hearing and they have to go through a series of steps that are associated with the state. And those will get done sometime between now and March. Our partners are the Village of Lake George, the City of Glens Falls, Warren County, and us. And all of those municipal leaders have been tied in and briefed from the beginning. They know where we are on this. At some point when this is approved, that activity will be orchestrated from here. John will add that to the work he's already doing weekly on broadband and cellular issues. He continues to hold a call with all of these same stakeholders every single week. He's been doing that for 5 years. So all this essentially becomes is a new agenda item for a forum that we are already managing on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. There is potential for this to be a model for other communities in Warren County. That's one of the things we think is most exciting. If we're able to demonstrate that expanding the cell network produces the benefits that are associated with this grant, we would make future applications and we would probably still be the grant administrator on behalf of these municipalities so that they could do this collectively. We'd be the aggregators. And then finally, this section on entrepreneurial support, that's essentially a pass-through from a resolution that the EDC passed earlier. Bob is here today. I think we will continue to look to expand the entrepreneurial ecosystem, but this is not something that is impactful to our budget. It's simply reflecting that it's coming through.
Sorry, a resolution that the LDC.
Sorry.
Question. Are we taking direct cost recovery on these extra projects?
No.
So that's something to consider long term, because if you're still paying out all the dollars you were paying out, right? And I understand it's the space you're in, but it's an expansion of effort, right, on the project. And if the entity isn't getting any of its overhead covered by these projects.
That's exactly what that's paying.
So we are taking.
Well, I guess I didn't understand your question. So with the exception of the childcare initiative, where there is a resource that will be, their expenses will be passed through directly to the foundation, all of this is overhead recovery.
Yeah.
Every dollar of what's here is overhead.
So the membership campaign, we're in a great place for the 2026 membership right now. Already, I think we're at 70,000, 77,000 either received or pledged. And with other businesses that we've been engaging with, and maybe a contest that we might unleash on all of you to generate more membership. We're gonna get some money. We're probably gonna exceed one here. Other income, the interest rates have changed a little bit. They came back up again since September, and so I just added a little variance for what I think we might make on the money markets. The other portion in that other income is our membership in kind for Just Water. That might be confusing for people, but it's an in-kind product, not an in-kind service, so it has to go. For expenses, again, the annual events kind of, it's shaken out now, and so I've added 10,000 for the actual cost of the event itself, not the marketing portion of it, but the location and the sound, the AV and all that stuff. We added a 2,000 for the expenses that we can't budget for, things like HR expenses that come up.
Yeah, I cringe when I see the flowers for BOD members. I think we bought flowers once.
Oh, no, I think it's just, there's been sympathy, like things that happen to people that.
Majority of this.
I'm sorry.
The HR work that we do to support whatever mandates come from the state, like annual sexual harassment training and other things like that. That's the vast majority of it.
Board members, arts members.
Yes, they did. It's recovered nicely.
Because we're allowed. We sent to a weekly. Insurance, I'm really psyched about this. We've budgeted for a 20% increase on this is health insurance for staff. And we have made some adjustments. We've changed our carrier, we changed our broker, we changed our FSA administrator, and it's all shaken out to a decrease of a little under 6,000.
It's pretty remarkable. Can we all talk?
Hometown Solutions, yeah.
The carrier.
We moved to MVP, and MVP is also going to be managing the FSA. Oh, good, because it's like so much.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't.
You're like, what am I watching?
I did not want to skim over this. I did. Deanne spent hours and hours and hours trying to figure this out. We have paid between 15 and 20% more each year for the last several years. And I didn't know, I really didn't think it was realistic. I thought we were going to change carriers and maybe save a few $1,000s. She figured this out together with Hometown, who spent a lot of time with us for a very small group.
I
And
can't say enough good things.
yeah, to bring this down to less than we spent last year is a significant rebaselining of this effort. And there is a significant change in the way that we're doing this. We removed dental from the plan. And instead, we talked about this with the audit and finance group. We're going to make a contribution that is commensurate with what we were paying for dental before into the, is it FSA or HSA? FSA account for those employees which are covered. So if you are already, if you're getting,
The HSA, FSA, it's the flex money.
That's what we have. Yeah, we have an FSA.
HSA.
well, we passed the resolution that allowed us to make contributions to either. What we've been told is that for what we're trying to do next year, the FSA may be better than the HSA, but we can make them to either.
Well, actually, to be clear, we have to do FSA, or at least I do, because I have such a carryover. That was another
And since we're switching,
poor communication with
Yeah,
our
tail on it.
Yeah, but
but
so,
but we can do either, and in future years, we may choose to go to an HSA instead of an FSA. For the plans we've chosen, we can do either. They're
It's not an
like-
HSA and an HRA.
no, we can't, for the plans we've chosen, we can only do FSA. We didn't pick the high difference.
Well, they were in those,
But we.
they were in the spectrum of choice. They're part of the
Yes.
plans that we consider.
Yes,
So if anybody were to have opted for those, then we would have to have an HSA. And so that's why we passed the resolution so that we could fund either one. So if somebody were to come in this year and opt for one of those other plans, then we would have to open an HSA, and I wanted the ability for us to do that without having to bring. Here's the bottom line. She did a lot of work to save us a lot of money. And I think the coverage is commensurate, and there were a lot of novel things that were sorted out, and I want to thank you for doing all that.
Do they happen to have the $600 wellness membership? Yeah, so that's huge,
it is really huge.
and
Yeah,
you should really, because you can cover everything, concert tickets, all part of your, like it covers almost everything. And you just submit a receipt and they reimburse you. It's really, that I would buy out.
Hudson Headwaters and the hospital, like MVPs.
Yeah, we
It's the
just
same.
moved to them September 1st.
Salary and wages, there's no variation from what we had budgeted. It's the normal 3% increase for salaried employees, $1 for part-time. We budgeted 30,000 for a part-time person, 12,000 for intern. But again, that hasn't changed in September. The consultant fee, there's a variation we've added. Okay, so there's an extra $3,000 there, but we also moved things around in the programming. In the
Essentially
program
zero
area.
base.
Capacity planning product improvement, we've added 12,000 there. That is more aligned with what actually falls into that account at the end of the year. That includes the 7,000 that is now an annual sponsorship of the Albany Business Journal's Power Breakfast. As well as the $5,000 that we have to spend for the Connect All grant.
That $7,000 for the power breakfast is not simply to hold an event. We bring a disproportionate number of capital area businesses and business leaders in those events. And we have to do a better job of converting that into membership and participation here. But that's the best forum, that and see here, the two forums that we invest in to try to create that opportunity for us to be able to grow south.
I can think of two businesses that came to us for support directly after that. The one got grant. Do some subscriptions, variance based on the year end. Same thing for hosting, meeting, marketing. That's like the events that we attend. Is that, no, that's not the meetings that we attend. That's the engagements that like lunches, whatnot.
Things other than our annual luncheon, but that we spend money to bring people together. So
Hardware maintenance, we think that we're gonna have a meeting with Adirondack 10 today, but, it's likely that we're gonna need some upgrades to our hardware and security system. I mean, truly, we ride out 5 years with our computers, which I think is 2 years longer than most people do. That's it.
Any questions? If not, we will move on to the approvals and the resolutions.
Well, so within that recast budget are the assumptions that we have carried for the entire time I've been here, which is a 3% raise for the salaried employees. A commensurate adjustment to those that are hourly, which we did 2 years ago to make it equal in value. Not only the new insurance coverage, but the inclusion of the fact that there will be a dental subsidy paid into an employee's account rather than us carrying the insurance. The same level of life insurance and the same level of SEP contribution that we've had for the entire time that we've been here. So the changes in the carrier, the changes in the fact that there will now be a payment made to an account in a covered employee's name for dental, and everything else is essentially the same as what we.
Where's the offset in the program expenses? Whether you have increases here, but they were offset by decreases somewhere else. Just that. Want to see increase.
Where,
Are you saying income offset? What do you?
On the spreadsheet.
Yeah, or just when we were going through program expenses, whether there's, but they were offset elsewhere. So I'm just curious where that.
oh, well, we moved things around a little bit in programs, so, right, I guess.
What we're projecting.
Yeah,
It's
we're
like
projecting more,
tickets,
yeah.
More sponsorship.
Well, we definitely expect more of those.
Yeah, but I see what you mean, Matt. I think I kind of so.
We essentially took what we were expending on all of these line items, rationalized to make sure that they were realistic. And there were at least 10 line items where we made adjustments, sometimes with greater income and sometimes greater expense. I felt like we called them all out, but I'm not sure.
I know, it's just like I, behind the scenes, I kind of moved like around what I, between that capacity planning and the hosting meeting marketing. Like, I made it more clear, like those have been sort of catch-all accounts, really, to be honest. It wasn't, I've never had a lot of clarity on some miscellaneous items, whether they were one or the other. And we had a conversation, Jim and I think cleared them all up in the annual, like in this 2025 one. And so it should have a little bit. But yeah.
Just the contribution schedule go up. Flat percentage.
Yeah.
When it goes up. That's the option.
The percentage stays the same for the.
Yeah, percentage, but like 5.
Yes.
No other questions? If not, we will move on to the approvals and resolutions, and we'll come back to the board discussion recommendations. So under section 5, we want to go all together or one at a time? One at a time. The approval of the November financial statements, may I have a motion to approve? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Approval of the November 19th EDC monthly board of directors meeting minutes with the appropriate, no, there's no change to that one. As presented to you, may I have a motion to approve, please? Motion, John. Second, Melanie. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, abstained, the motion carries. EDC resolution 20251217-01 to approve the SEP contributions as recommended by the Audit Finance Committee and included in your package. May I have a motion to approve? Laura, second? Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, abstained, the motion does carry. EDC resolution 20251217-02 to approve the health, vision, dental, and life insurance contribution, again, as recommended by the A&F committee. May I have a motion to approve? Laura, second, Judy, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, abstaining, the motion does carry. EDC resolution 2025-1217-03 to approve the 2026 EDC employee salary wages increases as discussed and is recommended by the ANF committee. Can I have a motion? Melanie. Second. Second, that's it, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, abstained, the motion carries. Last one, correct? Yes. EBC resolution 2025-1217-04 to approve the 26 recast budget as we have just gone through. And again, as recommended by the ANF committee, they have a motion to approve. So, second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed, abstained, the motion does carry. With that, I go back to the board discussion recommendations, Jim, of the section 4. We're done with the first one, the board of directors.
Yeah, I think we can cover these very quickly. The board director meeting, the minutes are in there. We just have to have a motion to approve them. And as far as the 340, or I mean, we can say 340, not 320. I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that we continue to be in contact with both the Hudson Headwaters on how we can best be partners in both educating and advocating for this. I do get questions now from the business community asking how they can engage. So I think we have been effective in elevating this into the discourse. It's particularly concerning to people who see potential impacts on the coverage of their employees in rural areas. We've had deep discussion with more than one employer about that this year. And it's not the only issue that affects it, but we'll continue to engage with them. And when they feel comfortable with the idea that they're making a widespread advocacy or communication process, then we will be amplifiers and partners in that. But anybody who has any either concerns in the short term, or if you're aware of business colleagues or organizational colleagues that want to know more about this, obviously they can go to Hudson Headwaters, but we can also assist them as well. So I think you can just go ahead.
Yeah, I did want to note that I did skip over the discussion of the November 19th meetings. However, we approved it. It wasn't impacted. So.
But the change that Matt suggested.
Oh, good. Thank you. So we're on to the president and staff report. Turn it over to Jim.
Okay, so slightly different packet than you normally get. First thing I wanted to point out to you, you'll see it in your file here. I just want to thank you all, especially the staff, for what was really a wonderful event this past week. You know, our holiday events sometimes kind of a, you know, just thing on the calendar. This was a really vibrant place. Both rooms were filled. You could see the pictures. We had a broader cross section of people than we've ever had. I really felt like the vibe was positive. People were excited about being here. They had lots to talk about. Those of you who were here, you know, probably felt that. In addition, we raised about $750 in direct support to Big Brothers and Big Sisters. I went over and saw their operation when I brought their things to them earlier in the week. It's stunning, the scale of what they're doing. I mean, our contribution, meaningful as it is, was a tiny fraction of what they're doing. And they have a room that's as large as this entire office, filled with people and things. The Salvation Army has a similar scale to their operation. But what it pointed out to me was the responsiveness of the business group. And when I was over there, they wanted me to pass that on. That the majority of the support they get comes from the corporate side. There are many individuals who support the organization, usually financially. But when it comes to things where they have to have drives to collect toys, or they have to create a new program, that's almost always from the business side. They have a program. They now cover more than 100 kids than they did last year. And that's because they've innovated a program where they bring kids who do not yet have mentors into a small group setting, a handful of them at a time. And I met the person who actually runs this program. And they innovated this program. And the way that they bring these kids, many of whom are truly marginalized. Some of them are not able even to participate in school on a consistent basis. But the way the program works is that each kid gets a certain amount of money to show up, that they then invest in decisions, like they might teach them to cook. They go to a store and they buy their food and they cook there, and they do it as a group. But the key to this has been that the kids are not only engaged in learning, these are kids that were unserved before. And they feel very strongly. In fact, I'm sure Bill would come if we ever wanted him to talk about this, about the fact that they could not do this without the support of the business community. And they highlighted the fact that they watched this same thing happen when there were problems with payments for things like SNAP and food, and the business community responding. It was really gratifying to me to be the one that received it, and I want to make sure I pass it on to you and of course to all our members. We'll figure out how to get this word out to the members. But they said that there is really no community that they're aware of in the Big Brothers network that they work in that has the ability to engage the business community as effectively as we do. And they're now going to go help 5 other organizations pilot this program that they've started to try to add surface area. That's the kind of thing that I think not only, whatever our relationship is with them, you know, the gift card we give them is part of it, but the fact that we are engaged with them, I think is really important. Also, it was just a really fun party. So anybody who came, thank you. Anybody that didn't, you missed out. I think we still have a little bit of beer left, but you'll have to come another time for that. John, maybe talk quickly.
Yep. On this part here, the main difference, we continue to steadily go upward with the number of companies that we're engaged with. As the companies tend to be that we're engaged with. In December, the net new was two new ones. Both of them were retail. One of them was startup, one of them was an existing business. Give me a little bit of profile of one of them. They're both looking at locations or expanding in cities. So they're here, one of the year.
So there's a couple of things that are important here. One is that we increasingly see more and more businesses that walk through the door knowing this is the place to go. They start here. That's heartening. Both of these entities they had not visited someone else, was not referred to us by someone else. They just recognized this was the place to start. This is one of the companies known as Saratoga Spicery. They're out of the shirt factory right now. It's rare when we see a company that is following the guidance that we would give them. And this particular company, I think, is an example of the kind of entrepreneurial activity that we can support here. They've been in existence for more than 5 years in their current location. They do not have significant debt. They did not take on large fixed expenses like a expensive lease. They operated very modestly for more than 5 years and developed a repeatable cash flow. Then this business, which was located next to them, was essentially looking to get to retire. And they opportunistically then stepped in to try to buy that book of business. And now they're looking for help to expand because this side of the business is 4 times the size of this. Yes. And they asked for our help to be able to navigate the various products that they could see in terms of either loans or economic incentives. We've met with them now twice. I think they're very excited with the plans that we've laid out, and they came to us early enough that we can engage them before they've spent money that we can't reimburse from any of these vehicles. I think they're a model of what we would like to do the more that we are seen as this resource. They're now timing whatever their expansion is around the council that we're giving them so they can get the maximum benefit from the resources we can bring. We're partnering with the city on this. Jeff and I are actually meeting with them later today. And the key to this, to me, is that small businesses now feel like there is a home here too. So sometimes these numbers, you know, inside these numbers, it's hard to tell what's there. You can see in the charts what they make up. But I'm encouraged by the fact that we've always been seen as a supporter of the large scale employers and businesses here, and increasingly we're being seen by those that are at the other end of the scale as a vital resource. And at some point when we're working through the process, I may have some of them come and talk about their experiences and also some of their input and suggestions. So, you know, John, I think maybe we go to the,
Sure, yes,
what comes after that.
just that second chart with the pie chart there that was Jim talking about, the upper right, pie, the startups and the small business, it's just more than half of these engagements. So we definitely are, magnet, we're also a generator of small business opportunity here, and that's where the opportunities are.
A question on that, John?
Yeah.
So says it's through December, so that,
Yeah.
you know, 52.9%. Does that mean that at this point in time, that's the list of people, or that's an average for the year? So I'm just wondering
Okay.
how it's shifting. Because I'm hearing-
Chart here, or the-
Yeah, this chart is it an average or it's a point in time?
It's point in time.
Point in time, okay. So I'm hearing you say the shift is at the smaller ones that are coming
It's,
into focus with us that maybe weren't there before.
every time I adjust this, it seems like it edges a little bit, but it's not a shocking up and down.
So let me make sure you understand the process. This is a running 12-month list. So if we have had an engagement within the last 12 months, and we believe that their inquiry is active, then they're here. If we haven't talked to them in more than 12 months, they drop off. And if they're new, they get added. And so that's where you see the change is in what's dropping and what's coming up.
When I try and give you at least what's net new coming in. So this. Call out someone that Deadwood, you know, used to want to board.
I mean, last year at 56 in December and this year at 79 is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
They all come to fruition.
I'm gonna call the list, but again, so many small opportunities, and sometimes they come back after an inactivity of 3 or 4 months. They go, where are you?
So we also look very much at that ratio, Kathy. At one point, we had thought that the right ratio was kind of a third between Glens Falls, Queensbury, and the rest of the county. If we look at it in terms of dollars, it doesn't really work that way. More than 80% of the economic value of the community is in Glens Falls and Queensbury, and if you were to put Lake George, it's well over 90%. And so the ability for, I don't know that it's realistic that we're ever going to get to a full third from the rest of the outer county, but because we try to maintain that balance, it means that we engage in communities like we are in North Creek, because they kind of function almost as like surgeons. So in North Creek, for instance, you're going to find it later in the presentation, there's an enormous amount of investment that's occurring there. It's not linear. It was really about a substantive change that occurred in that environment, and then us helping them tackle it. And of course, supporting anything that's already there. Go ahead.
Okay, my last point is too, even though it says large businesses, it's actually 9.4 that we engage in. We're constantly engaged with the bigger players in here. And you'll see that membership side too, but there's challenges on a lot of different businesses, the medical device side, the legacy manufacturing side, there's different things there, we're constantly involved with that and kind of communication with the various players.
You know, Mike, you know, we spent a lot of time with your organization, spent a lot of time with Hudson Headwaters. The numbers belie the amount of energy that it takes, because typically the things we engage with them on are substantive and take a significant amount of time and effort to be able to help provide. So that's a little misleading.
Retention is important.
Yeah. I did want to give you a sense of where we are kind of as we finish the year. We pulled a lot of numbers, and the only reason that I can give you all the numbers is that I'm in the process of trying to rationalize them. If you get numbers from official sources, they tend to lag anywhere from a quarter to a full year. And if you go to AI, you can get what appears to be much more current things, but I'm not convinced yet of their validity. So the reason that I don't have this filled with numbers is because I'm not yet confident which number to give it. But here's what I know. This county stayed billing over the course of the year. There were ins and outs. So for instance, our continued climb on the sales tax side had more than one break in it during the course of the year. I mean, can articulate that. But compared to our peers, we did not see the kind of negative curve direction change that many of our peer counties had seen. And I think that speaks to the diversification of our economy. Even though the majority of it is tourism related, everything north of us is far more sensitive to near-term pressures like the Canadian decrease in business. So if you were to go to Essex County or you would go to places north of us, they saw a immediate and continued loss where they, at the end of the year, they're down from where they were the previous year. The fact that the Warren County was modestly growing in almost all dimensions, even on sales tax, that it's modestly growing. That is an aberration in northern New York. And I really think we have to take stock in the fact that our efforts to try to understand our economy and work on all of it, not just one part of it, is paying dividends for us. Sometimes staying where you are is victory. And in this past year, I think that was what we saw. One of the things I was surprised by, and this belies, I think, the common belief, manufacturing here has stayed stable for the last 2 or 3 years. And that's despite the fact that many of our largest manufacturers left. Lehigh left. Angio reduced. Those things happen. Even across the bridge, Essity left. And for our manufacturing total jobs to stay relatively static, and listen, I'm not convinced that by the time we get the year-long lag data from the Department of Labor that will turn out to be true. But the fact that it stayed resilient through at least half of this year, it's pretty remarkable. It says that what's happening is that other places are picking up that capacity. The smaller entities that we are helping to cite, and sometimes we see them and sometimes we don't. The people that are in Native Park, the people that Joe Gross is citing by himself, and the ones that we're supporting. The net of all of this is that our manufacturing is staying stable at about 12%. I really did not expect it. I expected that we would see a slow attrition of that line. There's another factor that if you were to believe the analysis that's being presented to us by our tools, says that our efforts at capacity building are a big chunk of this. That, for instance, places are more likely to go where they believe there is investment being made in things like infrastructure, housing, and public amenities. And the perception of things like Glens Falls DRI have played a disproportionate role in defining the belief inside of New York that this is a place on the rise. And this is not something that I made up. If you do your own Google search about Glens Falls, you will see literally scores of articles talking about it. And, I don't know how good these lists are, but they certainly generate interest. Glens Falls is the #7 best community to be in the state of New York, according to U.S. News and World Report. We were never on that list before. And the reason we're on that list is because so much media is being covered on the resurgence of Glens Falls, and it re-emerged as a place. This is important. It's important because perception as well as resources eventually lead to decisions by businesses both large and small. And I think we see a disproportionate number of small to medium-sized businesses. We have yet to see any large business decide that this is where they want to plant their flag. And I have to be honest, I don't know how well positioned we are. As I told you before, there's more than 30 of those kind of searches that are sponsored by New York State Empire Development every year. We've only been able to respond to 1 or 2. We simply don't have the sites that are required. They want 50 acres. They want power that would be equivalent to the entire draw of Warren County. They want water and wastewater resources that we don't have. And we have to acknowledge the fact that we are not competitive today in chasing after those 500 plus employer organizations that are looking to take over an industrial park that's the size of half of Glens Falls. That doesn't mean we can't participate in this. It doesn't mean that we aren't participating in this. We have to rescale what we're doing. But I was heartened by the numbers we get. And as we get more confidence in those numbers, I'm going to share the outright numbers. But the one thing I'm certain of is the county did their own review of this at the state of the county. I don't know if you were there, Mike. But John Kaplan spoke, Kevin Garrity spoke, Nate E2 spoke. There were several things that they shared. They shared the robustness of the tax base. They shared the pressures that they're under. And they shared, all three of them, shared their partnership with the EDC as a fundamental component of what was going well here. I didn't script any of that. I guess I should have thought about how to do that, but I didn't. They did that of their own accord. You know that all of this ties to our strategy. And so you'll hear us talk about this every time. There's a chart in here that tries to tie this to the three components. In tourism, the tourism dollars stayed relatively flat, which again, I believe is a victory given the fact that most of our peers had lost. In the community and what we think of as the service sector, which is buoyed by healthcare, there was actual growth, but it's threatened by things like 340B and some of the other changes that have funded. But right now, median income, workforce, and economic impact of that sector is greater than it was last year. And I think that's going to continue because our demographics suggest that demand is not going to go away. And the chaos that is being produced by some of these funding changes means that an institution like Glens Falls Hospital is more critical than it's ever been. So we will continue to try to engage in that to protect that. On the productive and entrepreneurial economy, which is really everything else, which includes manufacturing, but it also includes all this entrepreneurial activity, we're seeing a lot of activity. So in all three sectors, things are going well. I wanted to make sure you understood what we're going to continue to do. We have engaged in not only direct support of businesses in these three areas, but we've engaged in the things that contribute to them. We've spent an inordinate amount of time in North Creek trying to help them get their sewer implemented. And if you turn to, I think it's this chart, it says private investment now. This is the consensus of the models of what's the total investment that has occurred. For instance, in downtown Glens Falls, you'll hear the city talk about the fact that there's between $45 and $50 million worth of private investment that has occurred as a result of the DRI. But there are other things that are going on in Glens Falls that they oftentimes don't aggregate. Either expansions to modest manufacturing facilities down on Prize Island, to housing developments that are not proximate to the DRI. And the net of it is that it's double what's happening on South Street. So we have not only a good news story going on here, we have the entire thing growing at a rate. Honestly, these numbers are larger than any time that I can find the data in the last 10 or 12 years. The village of Lake George, that is a little more specious to me. That's really real estate driven because there's a lot of LLCs that buy properties. And those properties around Lake George go every week. They set a new record for the highest priced home there. So I don't know that there's $120 million worth of direct investment in what we would consider to be the tourism sector, but there is in terms of what's tracked by the state. The Orta anchored North Creek, that is really important. Thank you, Sue. I know you got it. This is the result of years worth of work between the EDC, Chuck Barton, and the IDA and the town. And they tried for 30 years to get that sewer passed. We helped them develop a different strategy. We actually populated their boards. We actually advocated greater support from them from the county. We did a lot of things that sometimes were to some degree, I don't know, controversial, correct, or certainly new. The investment within 8 months of when that sewer began to be constructed is staggering. If you net out Orta and they're more than $25 million in putting the ski bowl lodge and the zip coaster, there is now an additional $25 million that has been invested in North Creek. Weekender hotels, the Old Phoenix is the largest piece of that, but Rev Rail has expanded dramatically. David Frontline has shown up with his property development company. There are housing developers that are actively pursuing developments that would never have been able to be pursued without that wastewater. That this process is like where we work on something that has been an intractable problem for a long time, we help find the solution, and then the investment shows up. It won't operate like this for every year, but I do believe there is a surge of demand. There isn't any real hotel stock there. I think there's certainly opportunity well beyond the weekender for further growth. I imagine that the sewer will quickly need to be expanded, but it's all operating inside the hamlet. And this is a process that now other cities in the north are watching and saying, this is a template for how we might be able to do it. I was approached by a community in Essex County saying, I've watched what's happened in North Creek, and we'd like you to come help us figure out how to do that. Now, I don't know exactly how we'll do this, but I also know that the opportunity exists and there's no one quite like us, and we should consider that. Because most of the things that operate in at least half of Hamilton County, at least half of Essex County, certainly in Washington County, tend to accrue to us. And so if we are able to help southern Essex counties like Ticonderoga or like Scroon, almost all of what they wind up procuring and engaging in economically is going to be realized here. I think we need to figure out how we could do this. I don't know the answers, but I know that the demand is forming up, and it's because they see numbers like this. West Mountain, John knows well, I mean, $190 million is the total value of what is being proposed up there. It's working its way through the town process. I think something significant is likely to occur there. We are going to continue to be advocates for that as long as it's being done in a way that's aligned with our role with the town of Queensbury. But if that were to be realized, that $190 million is the largest amount in a single development north of Albany that I can find. That is enormous in terms of its addition to the tax base of not only Queensbury but the area. To add both housing and to add long-term tax base to this is part of what we're here for. I still am not 100% certain that I believe that there's $420 million worth of direct business investment. As I said, I know some of these figures from Lake George are being driven by private real estate transactions. But even if it was half of that, and I believe it's firmly at least half of that, this is the most that I've seen in the more than a decade that I've been. We are experiencing a rare opportunity, and it is not unique to Glens Falls, but it is centered in Glens Falls. I wanted to make sure you knew where our money was at the end, come out at the end of the year. We still receive the vast majority of our money municipally. You can see exactly where we are. The vast majority of it comes from the county. We experienced a change in Queensbury. I believe we're likely to experience no change in the city. And we're gonna talk about that more later. So the number that's come to us from municipalities has stayed flat, and I think that's a good outcome for this year. At least flat to what we expected. The membership. We had just over $100,000 in membership last year. We had a spirited conversation about this in the audit finance group. I wanted to set a much more aggressive target. And I have to tell you honestly, it was because I want to engage you in this process. I believe we should take full advantage of the momentum that we have. I believe that we are right now known to a community that is larger than the one we're in. We've wound up setting a target at 110. And I respectfully understand that. But I think the potential is greater than that. If just the people who were at the top two tiers of our membership structure renew, we still have 2 or 3 of them that have not. And we just close on the people who haven't yet answered us. We will now have more than our target in the bank. Having $77,000 committed by Christmas, I mean, this never happened before. The willingness of everyone to say yes. We've had nobody call us and say, I either want to talk about how this can be less, or I want to talk to you about what the value of the EDC is. Instead, what we got was a check. It's a very different scenario than the last couple of years. I believe that right now is the time for us to expand our membership, particularly South. I think we need to think about all the organizations that stand to grow and benefit from the development that's occurring here. And I'm going to work aggressively on it. I'm going to ask all of you to do it. Tricia's developing a list that we think you may have a relationship, or it may be aligned with things you're already doing. We're asking you to touch base with 1 or 2 people to try to grow our base, both in terms of sectors and in terms of full membership. On the grants, are there flowers on the line here, Jim? So yes, we're going to gamify a little. We're working on different things. We actually talked to the landlords here to see whether or not we could create a reserved parking spot for, the board meeting. For whoever it is that, is leading on the scoreboard of bringing net new members. I haven't closed on that deal yet, but we're gonna try to come up with some benefit for those of you that are, engaged in this. We'd like to make it fun, but we also think that this is the time. I did want to talk about grants. We're not done looking for grants. I understand the, you know, slippery slope on them. You know, you can wind up incurring just as much expense as you develop in revenue. So we will continue to talk openly with you about those that we're exploring. But if there's, you know, for instance, if there was a grant associated with helping North Creek expand, it would be aligned with the work I'm doing. I spend as much time in North Creek as I do in Queensbury and Glens Falls right now. But we're seeing an investment that is proportional to that. I don't know where the next wave of them are, but we're looking for another $50,000 worth of overhead support for things we're doing. And we're trying to diversify this base. And if you become aware of those opportunities, and sometimes these grants, like the Rockefeller Family Foundation is not a state or federal grant. That is a private grant that we're participating in. They can come from a lot of different directions. And we're working aggressively to see how we might operate that way with the work that we're doing around the Center for Freshwater Protection. That would be another area where grant money could potentially help us do the things we've already said we were going to do. There is a grant that we're engaged in right now that is not included in the budget, and that is to expand infrastructure along the southern exposure to the Hudson River for a second power feed, so that anybody that was located in that area would have the benefit of redundant power. The ESD is partnering with us, and National Grid is partnering with us. If we were to proceed with this, it would be roughly a $5 million, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less effort. We would be the orchestrator of that effort, and we would be doing it on behalf of either the brownfield sites and redevelopment opportunity or the existing businesses and organizations that would benefit from it. We are the connector of all of those things. We haven't finalized it. We haven't even actually formally applied for it, but we are in deep conversations about how it would occur. We're also in discussions with SEDC about that, because we could potentially partner with them across the river so that it could benefit their sites on the other side. So more to come on that. The last thing I wanted to talk about is this membership level. You can see in the chart, we've done pretty well at gathering the high-end entities at the top two tiers. I think we're at 60-80% of the previous base on the two top levels. Where we have, I think, the opportunity is bring net new people here. And I think it's probably less important about what level we bring them in at, and more that we just make them part of the community and start to figure out how to engage them in the work that we're doing. If you look at the numbers here, we're skewed by large employers. I think there's an opportunity for us to balance this with some of the energy that's around small and medium-sized organizations. And I think ideally we would wind up, just as we're doing day to day, we would find our membership base to match where we're spending our resource, which is roughly even between the two. All right.
Thank you. Any questions for Jim? Is there any other business?
I think we should go for very short, 2 minutes.
Executive session, so I ask for a motion to go.
We have to say what it's for,
Executive session.
and I have to say it right. It's what was the language that
I thought you were going in before.
well, but the language that you used before.
Oh, yeah, discuss the possible appointment or
Yes,
promotion or demotion.
yes, that is.
That's, they ask for a motion to go into executive.
I got one second.
I'll make a motion.
Second, Tricia, you get the turn us on.
And give me a.
Right. It will be very quick.
Ashley, if you're on, I'm just going to turn off record, but I'm going to keep you on for the executive session.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Figure that out. Stop recording.